brings a broader point into marriage and if we actually took marriage seriously like we did centuries ago.
Hi guys. This is pretty much been Jonathan Daly.
Clip of the week. So clip of the week is about a guy's opinion on divorce. And I have to say, I kind of like it. So listen to it.
I think that if you want to get divorced, you should legally have to do your entire wedding in reverse. Like the government makes you rent out a function hall, invite every single person who was at your first wedding. Then they have to watch you dance with someone you don't like anymore to a song that you never want to hear again in your entire life. And you got to pay to feed all those people cold chicken and fish. Then the best man and the maid of honor make speeches about how they were pretty fucking wrong the first time with all that stuff they said at your wedding. And then the only way to make it legally binding is everyone sits in really small folding chairs, like too close together, and they watch you kiss your spouse one last time, and then the divorce is final. I feel like way more people would be like, we probably can just work it out, actually.
I hope you enjoyed that clip as much as I did, and I think that would be a great idea. Okay, legally, let's talk about actually enforcing something like that. No, I don't think a legislature would ever go for that in any state. However, it brings a broader point into marriage and if we actually took marriage seriously like we did centuries ago, an actual vow, wedding vows. Speaking on this divorce clip still, this brings me to an argument that I've thought of, a legal argument when it comes to divorce. And I haven't done this yet. I'm waiting for a client who I'm going to propose it to and see if they think we should do it. I don't know if a judge would go for it, but legally, it sounds like a sound argument. I would like to hear the opinions of the viewers out there, what they think about it. So here's my argument. Let's say my client gets served with divorce papers. One element that has to be alleged in any divorce petition is that the marriage is irretrievably broken. That's fine. Oftentimes, as a legal maneuver, a strategy, you'll file a counterclaim. So a counterclaim still will allege that the marriage is irretrievably broken. Essentially, it's just their own petition for divorce. So it's always a good strategy to be on the offensive, be the one filing the divorce. It puts you in the driver's seat, so to speak. So filing a counterclaim kind of gets you that strategy back. So I always recommend it. However, my legal strategy is similar to this divorce clip. My legal strategy would be to file a counterclaim. And this counterclaim, instead of a counterclaim for divorce, it would be a counterclaim for verbal breach of contract. Why is this such a genius maneuver in my opinion? And there will be people that say that you can't do that. It's no fault divorce is not a thing anymore. Well, yeah, we're not saying any no fault divorce. This is a counterclaim for a verbal breach of verbal contract, a breach of contract claim. Verbal contracts are still enforceable and can be sued over in almost all states, including Florida. What is the problem with verbal contracts? The problem is proving them, right? Because anybody can say anyone has a verbal contract at any point. But that's not an issue when it comes to divorce because there were witnesses to the verbal contract. And almost every marriage that is done by an ordained minister has certain wedding vows. Till death do us part. So there's plenty of evidence to prove the verbal contract of till death do us part, that we will never get divorced. So why not counterclaim that? And what is your resolution? What do you ask for the court for in a normal breach of contract claim? The damages or the how is the party made whole who was the victim of the breach of contract? Well, they put that party in a place that they would have been had the other party not breached the contract. In a divorce, they're not going to force people to stay together, right? That's almost like slavery, forcing someone to stay married to someone that they don't want to be. So what they would do is the next step, if they can't put someone back in the place that they would be had the breach of contract never occurred, they just make the other party pay for the damages, the compensatory damages, the monetary damages. So what are the monetary damages of divorce? They're devastating. We're talking attorney fees, your equitable distribution, the house that you own together, the marital home, your retirement. So that would be the claim for the counterclaim for verbal breach of contract would be that the party that's being wronged, that doesn't want to be divorced necessarily, gets to keep the house, all their retirement, alimony. Legally speaking, it's a kind of sound argument. Would a divorce judge actually go for that? Probably not. They'd probably try to lump it in with, it's no fault state, just split everything evenly, 50-50, call it a day. But I just want to make the argument and see if we couldn't have a judge kind of be on our side there, because legally speaking, it makes a lot of sense. And there's plenty of proof of that verbal contract. Why make the agreement in the first place if you didn't mean it? We're often held to contract. In the divorce case, when you enter into a marital settlement agreement to get divorced, you bet your butt that the judge would enforce that. So why would the judge choose to enforce that agreement, but not the agreement that the parties originally made at the time of getting married? I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Let me know in the comments. Interested to hear what people have to say about that. Just because no one's ever done it doesn't mean it's not a good argument and it can't possibly win. I mean, this is how law and case law gets developed. So maybe you'll be reading in case law and the history books about us one day. Maybe, probably not, but hey, wishful thinking. Oh, before we get into the Star Wars review, I did skip our new divorce case. So in this new divorce case, the issue is that parties have been married since 2008. They did buy a house April 2008, right after getting married. However, the house is titled only in my client's name. The mortgage is signed by both of them. However, the wife was put on the mortgage with an asterisk, and the asterisk specifically says only for purposes of waiving homestead rights. In other words, the wife's not liable for the mortgage. So we're going to make the argument, we're going to put in the petition that it's not a marital home, it's titled only in one party's name, in my client's name. Is that a winning argument? Probably not. Marital property and non-marital property, it's looked at the way it's titled is just one small factor, and it's not an overruling factor in how a judge decides what is marital property and what is not. The main issue here is going to be the fact that they were married prior to house being purchased. So there is going to be a presumption that is marital property, and I believe, yes, she has been living there and they were living there as a married couple, or that she has been in the house. So it's going to be a tough uphill battle trying to argue that the home is not a marital home. That being said, if my client used all of his own money and not joint marital funds to purchase and have to pay all the mortgage, taxes, maintenance fees on it, then we at least have a good argument, maybe not to say it's not marital property, but to say he deserves a unequal distribution of that marital property. In other words, he deserves a bigger chunk of that pie because he spent all the money and it wasn't from marital funds, while she was able to collect, pay into retirement, spend her money elsewhere, save up her money. He was actually pouring it into the marital home if the judge decides it is a marital home. So I thought I would mention that because that's probably an issue a lot of people run into and think it's interesting. So let me know what you think about that if you have questions about marital property in Florida.
For the latest in case updates, legal tips, news, and politics, make sure to like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram and our other socials, and above all, subscribe on YouTube to get your dose of excellence on a daily basis.